Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for his question. Madam Speaker, unfortunately the question is ill-conceived. Whilst I appreciate the Honourable Member's concern about the release of funds by FNPF, Madam Speaker, obviously has its own rules and procedures which need to be followed to enable members to withdraw funds from the fund itself. Once the members withdraw their funds, it is up to the individual member as to how best they will utilise these funds, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Honourable Prem Singh, you have
Madam Speaker, I thank the Attorney General for his answer, and I'd just like to inquire whether these assistance or this the concept will be extended to victims of Cyclone Zina, particularly the flooded areas ones.
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, I thank the Honourable Member for his question. That is a matter for FNPF to decide. And of course they have their own rules. For example, there are various safeguards to protect the system from abuse. And these are that members can only withdraw a total of 30% of their funds before the age of 55. The 30% of members' funds can be withdrawn for housing assistance, tertiary education, hospitalization, and assistance for natural disasters. This leaves 70% of the funds which can be accessed when the member reaches the age of 55.
Thank you. I give the floor to the Honourable Ndula Kiberato.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, in the last Hong Kong game, the message was on the screen, Vinaka FNPF, which showed that most of the people that went there used the money that they got from FNPF. I mean, the intention of the withdrawal was for the rehabilitation of Arkan. I asked the Honourable Minister, can you please explain this to us, if proper scrutinization of all the applications were done before they were given the money? Thank you.
Honourable Minister, Attorney General.
I understand where the Honourable Member is coming from, because we know that the funds abuse took place significantly prior to the reforms that was put in place by the Bainimarama government. In fact, Madam Speaker, international actuarials had said the manner in which FNPF funds were being utilised, for example, put down the drain in the development Northern Dollar, which had to be rescued, that the funds, FNPF funds, would have finished by 2052. So I can understand where these questions are coming from. Madam Speaker, as we've said, various safeguards have now been put in place. The 30% requirement, you cannot withdraw anything more than 30%, and precisely is one of the reasons why that has been done. Now, in respect of the actual funds that were dispersed because of Cyclone Winston, there were two sets of funds one could withdraw. One was for the emergency fund of $1,000, and then the other one was for the $5,000. Individual members, as has been advertised in the media, had to sign various declarations. And this is precisely also one of the reasons, Madam Speaker, whilst we have this bill in place, the false information bill that this House actually approved and is now Act of Parliament, precisely to address people who may want to abuse it. I saw that sign too. And of course, it does not mean everybody who withdrew it abused it. There are a lot of people who did benefit from it. There could have been one or two cheeky ones who actually were so cheeky that they thought they could put it up on the screen. But the reality is at the end of the day, Madam Speaker, this is their own money that they have used. And I can tell you the total amount of funds that has been dispersed by FNPF. The FNPF, Madam Speaker, processed 180,314 applications, and the total paid out is $272.5 million that FNPF disbursed. Now, this is obviously the members' funds, and if they are going to go and make false declarations, obviously that could catch up with them eventually, and this is why we need to strengthen our laws. And if they are using their own money for a purpose other than what they've stated they want to withdraw the money for, that is on their head. And that is their lack of short-sightedness. And this is why continuously we are saying we need to continue to develop a culture of honesty in Fiji, in our everyday lives. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. I give the floor to the Honourable Rokiliraki.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. One of the risks of the superannuation funds of the FNPF is political interference. That is one of the risks. And having this money accessible, which is 30%, to take care of the education, debt, and housing, most of these applicants have exhausted this 30%. What is there in the government to be able to assist those applicants, those who have genuinely accessed that fund, if they need education assistance or debt, which is allowable for $1,000. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister and Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, again, like I said, I understand the question by the members who are asking questions about the FNPF withdrawals. Madam Speaker, just a few years ago, about 10 years ago, at one stage that I again go back to the actuarial report, there was something like 23 reasons for which people could go and withdraw the funds. Any superannuation fund, Madam Speaker, cannot be treated like a savings bank. It's not like you deposit money and you take it out. It's the pooling of funds of all the employees in Fiji for the fund then to make an investment to provide a return on that pooling of funds, and which is a form of security for them upon their retirement. But funds throughout the world actually recognize the fact that people do need sometimes, for example, the ability to access those funds to be able to provide for certain basic requirements in life. Recently we were in Singapore. In Singapore, the contribution is combined with the employee contributes 20% of their wages, and the employer contributes 18% of the wages amount. But the fund over there, because it's so healthy, they actually allow up to 70% of withdrawals if people want to buy their own home. This is why the home ownership rate in Singapore is 93%. 93% of all Singaporeans actually own a title to their home. And as you would have, Madam Speaker, as we discussed in our last budget announcement, we have given incentives to private sector to come into that. We want to encourage home ownership. Government itself, the initiative that was put into place by the Honourable Prime Minister, we are giving now grants for people who want to build their first home. We give a $10,000 grant if they go through commercial banks. We give a $5,000 grant if they want to buy their first home. So there are those facilities available too. Similarly, the pressure on FNPF, Madam Speaker, and the members' individual funds has been reduced because now we have things like TELS. Before, people who did not receive scholarships and their parents would have to fork out money from their own pocket. Now they can actually go out and get TELS and fund their university education without the parents actually having to withdraw the funds from the FNPF. So it's put less pressure on it. So the reality is that we have now various mechanisms to ensure that the funds are buffered for the individual members. In respect of when they exhaust the funds, once you exhausted the 30%, you cannot go beyond that. So the issue, Madam Speaker, is we're taking a holistic approach. We are, for example, the person who wants to go and borrow $1,000, $2,000. If they have a reporting with Data Bureau, they can't go to commercial banks, they go to the money lender. And this is what's driving people underground. These are some of the policies and legal changes we are taking place to take a holistic approach to it. So if the members' funds have been exhausted up to 30%, they have no opportunity to take out any more because it is also there for their protection. If we allow them to break that barrier, once they go into that 70%, what will happen to them when they retire? We of course have through the Ministry of Social Welfare now a pension scheme for those over the age of 68 for $50 if they don't have a superannuation fund. So those kind of social benefits are put there for them. But of course we need to ensure that they protect their funds. The other last point I'd like to highlight to Honourable Kiliraki, he's talking about the management of the funds, Madam Speaker. Now if you look, and I urge Honourable Kiliraki to actually read the law, the new laws in FNPF. Honourable Kiliraki, I'm sure he's getting a lot from Honourable Randrondo too, but the point is, if Honourable Kiliraki reads the law, you will find that now the membership of the board requires different skill sets of people that need to be on the board. You need, for example, people with legal background, accounting background, you need people with engineering skill sets to have a board. The whole purpose of the board is not merely representation, it's the ability and the quality of contribution by the board members to ensure that the fund actually does what it's supposed to do. Now you can say that previously, oh you had 2 from the employees, 2 from the employers and government. But Madam Speaker, what kind of skill sets did they bring? Can you have somebody that may know how to manage $4 billion? That's the asset base. You need to have a good cross-section of people bringing good skill sets to the board to provide better governance. Not some trade unions, Madam Speaker, who may only be running a small trade union organization. What do they know about rate of return on investment? Some of them may know. I'm not saying all of them don't know. Some of them do know. Some of them don't know. But isn't it better to have a financial expert? Isn't it better to have somebody with legal proficiency? Isn't it better to somebody who maybe have other skill sets that's required for a board that is going to manage $4 billion worth of assets?